Hello, I'd like to go over the practice strings test to hopefully help you get ready for the actual one. To start off with, we'll do this problem called middle for, which just takes a string and with guaranteed even number of characters and returns the middle four characters. But if it's too short, it just returns the word short. So to start off every method for the moment, we're going to start with two words, public static. We're returning the middle four characters of a string, so that sounds like a string to me. And we're supposed to call it middle for. Now to do our job, we're going to need a string argument, because it's pretty hard to take the middle four characters of a string if you don't have a string. I'll call mine str, just because that's probably what you're used to. And then a good first step is deal with any special cases first. So in this case, if the string is too short, like you can't grab the middle four characters because there's not four characters to grab, I'm just going to return the string short. So I'm just going to say, hey, if str.length, if the length of my string is less than 4, I can't return the middle four characters, and I'm just going to return the string short instead. Now, I have to put it in quotes. If I didn't have it in quotes, the computer would think this is a variable name, like str. Now, if I get to the else, it must be long enough, and so I'm just going to return, I want part of a string. Anytime I want part of a string, like the middle four characters, I'm going to have to use substring. Now, the way substring works is you first number you put in is the first index you want. And since this string could be hundreds of characters long, if I want the middle four, it's probably going to have to be relative to the length of the string divided by 2. Anything related to the middle, like if you want the first half of a string, it's going to have to be relative to the length divided by 2. If you want the last half of a string, it's going to be related to the length divided by 2. Or if you want anything to do with the middle, it's going to have to relate to the length divided by 2. But that's not quite right, because if you look at this one as an example, I always like taking a concrete example and seeing how it would work. This is 8 letters long, or 8 characters. 8 divided by 2 is 4, but indexes start at 0. So this would be index 0, this would be index 1, the M would be index 2, P would be index 3, and F would be index 4. So the length divided by 2 would give me this F, but I want the middle four characters, which are these guys. So how do I go from 4 to 2, which is the index of the first one I want? I just subtract 2. So the length divided by 2 gives me this index. I want this index because that's where I want to start, so I'm just going to subtract 2 from it. And that'll get me there. Now, for the first index I don't want, I will also need to do the length divided by 2. Now, remember, I want the middle four characters, which would be like this, and the length divided by 2 is F. Now, I've got the number, that's the index of the F, and I want the number of the first index I don't want. The first thing I don't want is N, so notice that is just 2 letters after the F, so I'm just going to say plus 2. That is the first index I don't want, and that'll work there. So we're all good for middle four. If it's less than 4 characters and I can't return the middle four, I'm going to return short, just the string short, because that's what I told you to do. Otherwise, I'm going to return part of the string using substring. This is just a number. That's the index of the first character I want, the index of the start of the middle four characters, the length divided by 2 minus 2. And then after the comma, this is just a number equal to the first index I don't want. So that's the length divided by 2 plus 2. And the next guy, we got the third last character. So I give you a string. You want to return the third last character of that string as a char type. But of course, if the string's too short, if it's 2 characters, if it's 1 character, if it's 0 characters, you can't return the third last character, so you're just going to return this. Now remember, to tell the computer that it's a char, and not like a greater than less than symbol, you're going to have to surround it in these single quotes. So, like before, if we want to start a one, we're going to have to start with public static. We are returning a char. We're returning the third last character as a char, so careful with that. And we're supposed to call it third last char. It takes a string, and we're getting the third last character of the string. I'll call it str again, but you can call it whatever you want. Now, first we want to deal with the special case. So if our string is too short, if the length is less than 3, I can't return the third last character, so I'm just going to return this instead. Just to say it's too short, I can't return anything, or the third last character anyway. Otherwise, if it's not too short, I'm going to return the string set to uppercase, because notice I did ask for the third last character as a char set to uppercase, and then do char at, which gets the character at the index I put in here. And if I want the index of the third last character, that would have to be at str.length minus 3. Index of the second last character of a string is always the length minus 2. Index of the last character of a string is always the length minus 1. So if I want the third last character, it will always be the length minus 3. This will not work if I do this in a different order, like if I had the char at before the to uppercase, because the computer goes left to right. Str is a string and can use string methods. Str to uppercase is an uppercase version of str, also a string, which can use string methods like char at. But this, the whole thing there, is a char. So once it gets to the end here, it's a char. Chars can't use string methods like to uppercase. So you do have to make sure the to uppercase comes before the char at. Stuff like char at and equals should always be the last thing in the chain of methods. And that should do the job. Quick check. Looks like we're good. On to the next one. These are the string 2 style questions. Now this one here, you get a big string and you are counting how many times the word comp shows up, ignoring case. So comp shows up twice in this case, and you are just returning true if comp shows up an even number of times, and false if it shows up an odd number of times. Comp shows up 3 times in this example, so that's an odd number, so that is false. In this question, in this example, comp shows up 4 times, which is an even number, so that's true. So you just count how many times comp shows up and return true if it's an even number, and false otherwise. So a standard counting question, we'll start every question with public static. In this case, we're returning true or false. That's called a Boolean variable. And we gotta call it count comp even. And it takes a string like all the others. I'll call it str again for tradition's sake. Now, any counting style problem, we have to have an int to hold the number of times we've seen the word comp. And then we do our typical for loop, tradition, int I equals 0, I plus the word length. In this case, comp has 4 letters. It's less than or equal to the string's length. That'll just make sure we're never looking at characters outside the bounds of the string. It's just our condition perfectly set, so we check every group of 4 letters. And then we make I go up by 1 each time, so we check the first 4 letters, and then the next 4 letters, and so on. So we've got our for loop, and then we just check to see if we can see the word comp. So if str dot substring, as we want part of the string, we want to check it from between I and I plus 4, because comp is length 4. So that's grabbing the current 4 letters starting at I. We want to check that that equals ignore case comp. Now you could also have like converted str to all lowercase or to all uppercase first, and that would work great too. And then every time we see the word comp, we're just going to increase our count by 1. And then by the end of the for loop, we've increased count by 1 every time we saw the word comp, so count should equal to the number of times comp shows up in the string. And then we could do this whole thing. We could say, hey, if count mod 2 equals 0, if count has 0 remainder when we divide it by 2, it must be an even number. Then we return true. And if we don't return true, we'll return false. But that's longer than we need. So this is more work than we need. Right now we're saying, hey, if this statement is true, we're returning true. And if this statement is false, we're returning false. Why don't we just one-line this and return the results of this true-false math. If that true-false math is true, we'll return true. And if it's false, we will return false. Just whatever this is equal to. If count is even, we're returning true because this will be equal to even. And if count is odd, we'll return false because count will be, or this will be equal to false. Now, last one. I'm making a method called repeat that takes a string and a number of times we want to repeat that string, and also forces it all to be uppercase because we're pretty excited. So we start the method the way we do all others. Public static. We are returning a string, so that's our return type. Public static string. Party is a string, and we're calling it repeat. And we need 2 arguments this time. We need a string, the string to repeat. I'll call it str again. And we need to take an int, which is number of times or whatever. I'll just call it num for fun. And then this is a string building style problem, so we're going to need a string to hold our answer. I often call mine result. Started as an empty string, and we're just going to add str to result num times. So we need some loop that will execute num times. We can either do for int I equals, say, 1, I is less than or equal to num, I plus. That will loop once for 1, once for 2, once for 3, all the way up to num. And then every time that happens, we will want to add the string to our result. Now we could either just do this, and at the very end, we can just return our result dot to uppercase, because we want to force the whole thing to uppercase. Or we could throw that right here if you'd rather. So either way is a great method to do this. Now another way, if you prefer while loops, you could do while num is greater than 0, and then just count down with num. So every pass-through loop will take 1 away from num. So this will also execute num times. So any way you want to do it, some loop that will execute num times, add result or add string to the result each time, and then return the result at the end. That's how you do all the questions on the practice test. The practice test is quite similar to the actual test, so hopefully you found this helpful. Thanks for listening.